Hello, everybody. Welcome to my beginner series for Roblox. In today's video, we're going to be discussing how to make your game, how to use the tabs in Studio, how to insert objects into the Explorer, things like parts, models, meshes, scripts. We're going to be learning about how to change your theme, just like as you can see mine's this darker theme, whereas yours might be bright white, and how to publish your place to Roblox. So first off, what we want to do is open up RobloxStudio, and we want to hit over here on this new tab. So there's a couple of tabs over here. We want to make sure we're on new, and then we're just going to click on base plate right here. And what this is going to do is it's going to create our place. So that's great. But there's really nothing in it. You know, there's maybe just this base plate and the sky, but not really much to do. So first off, I'm going to show you how to use the tab system within Studio. So there's a couple of ways to go about this. There are keyboard shortcuts to open up certain tabs, but the method I'm going to show you today relies on right-clicking on this little gray part of the screen up here, and I think you can. Nope. Okay, it has to be right here. And as you can see, you got this huge, overwhelming list of tabs to open, but you don't need to worry about half of this stuff on here. Probably more than half. What really we want to look at today is these two tabs here called Explorer and Properties. So we're just going to open up Explorer first, and I might just shrink that a little bit. And we're going to open up Properties as well. Make sure we don't open up Performance. We just want to open up Properties. So these might be laid out in a different position on your screen than in mine. Like yours might look like this, and you have to click down here to switch between the Explorer and Properties. Yours might be over here. Yours could be on the bottom of the screen. It doesn't matter where they are. In fact, I encourage you to change the position of these tabs so that they fit your, I guess, cleanliness style. They fit the way that you want to, work in Studio. So I personally like to have the Properties tab over here on the right side of the screen. Sorry, I just had to bring it over there to minimize it a little bit. And then I also like to place it right underneath the Explorer tab. Now that's a bit hard to do sometimes. As you can see, it's very, very tricky. If it highlights the whole screen, it's going to bring up this little tab thing over here again. So what we want it to do is highlight half of it, or maybe a little under half, as you can see right here. And then all we need to do from here is just kind of enlarge it and shrink it as we need. We can do that with the same over here, and it does both on the side. Changes both of the sizes. So this is great. Okay, we've got everything set up. We know how to use the Explorer. We've created our game. Or at least we know how to open the Explorer, but we don't know how to use it actually. And that's what I'm going to be showing you now. So as you can see, we have a whole array of things listed here. We've got workspace, players, lighting, replicated first, a lot of complicated things. We obviously, most of us would know what lighting and players does, or at least kind of make assumptions based on the names. But what we want to focus on here today is what's called the workspace. So as you can see, this contains objects listed or named camera, terrain, and base plate. So if you look, actually, oh, I also forgot, you will probably have these buttons up here. The reason I didn't have them up there is I like to keep them minimized, which you can do by hovering over the selected tab. So maybe you have model selected or test, right? Whichever one is selected, and you just double click. That gets rid of them, and then you just have to double click to get it back. Or you could just also single click, and that puts it up here temporarily. and you could just click back on the game over here. We like to call this the viewport, and it will minimize it again. That doesn't happen if you double click though. This stays here. So if we click on any one of these tools, you'll see we've got something called select, we've got move, we got scale, we got rotate. And we click on the base plate, you can see it selects the entire base plate. That's because this object right here is what this big thing that we see here is. So let's try moving this base plate into terrain. As you can see, this does nothing. Let's move it into camera. And just like before, it everything still looks alright. It just changed where it's located. Now how about we try moving it in, let's say, lighting. Well, as you can see, we've still got these arrows, but the base plate is gone. We can't really see it. So this is because workspace, any object inside of workspace is what the game will put on your screen over here, right? So just because the part exists doesn't mean we'll be able to see it unless it is inside of workspace. It could be inside of terrain as long as terrain is inside of workspace. It could be inside of camera as long as camera is inside of workspace, but it must be within workspace. It cannot be all the way down here in test service, or maybe you don't have test service replicated first. It can't be all the way in there. It must be in workspace. So that's great. We now know how to use our tabs. But now, what if we want to, let's say, put a part right here, right? Maybe we want to build a giant, I don't know, floor or something, right? Well, there's a couple of ways to do this, but I'm just going to show you the easy way. So if you look up here under Home or Model, either one of these two tabs, you see right here we have something called Insert. This one's called Parts. We can either click on this thing right here, which will insert a part. If the top bar is hidden, right, and you only temporarily made it visible, you will have to double click on part, but it will still spawn it in. Don't worry about that if your thing is not minimized. That is just for people who prefer to have it smaller. So as you can see, it put a part right here on the ground. Sorry, I'm moving a little bit too fast. Okay, so as you can see, we clicked on this one, which is a little bit of a box-shaped thing, and that created a little rectangle slash box in there. But as you can see, we've got this little arrow here, which when we click it, we get block, sphere, wedge, and cylinder. And I'll show you what all these look like right now, although you can probably tell by their names and the images. A sphere will place down this little circular object right here, a sphere. Wedge will place down a wedge or a triangle. Don't worry about what I'm doing right now, I'm just trying to make it a lot easier for you guys to see. And cylinder will produce a cylinder. Imagine that. So we've got all these different part types. And as you can see, if we've got wedge, we move it into lighting, we cannot see the wedge anymore. Like I said before, we must keep it inside of the workspace. How about let's try putting wedge inside of baseplate. As you can see, that's fine. This doesn't affect it at all as long as we keep it in the workspace. Then you'll be able to see the part. Now let's try and go about importing things or inserting things like models. Now, models are pretty much just a little storage box that you can use to sort items with. So let's say, oops, I forgot how to teach you to do that. So you will either get this little plus sign thing here when you hover over workspace or any of the other parts, but you want to make sure you're doing it on workspace, because if you click this part here, it will put the object inside of workspace and not any of these other things. So you can either click on this plus sign here, which will bring up this huge list of parts, or we can right click if you don't have this plus sign and then hit insert object, and that will bring up the same page, exact same page. Now we can either look right here where it says model, or if you can't, it's also right here, but if you can't find it, there's also this search object bar up here, which we can do is search model, and as you can see, we get this object right here. So if we click on it, you'll see it put it right inside of workspace. Now this model, as you can see, it didn't add anything into the workspace. You know, we can't see it. Why isn't it there? Well, the reason we can't see it is because it, you know I said it was a box, but it's really just an imaginary box. The only reason models really exist is to make things in the Explorer, you know, this thing right here, all this, it's just to make it look a little bit neater. So let's say we had a bunch of, don't do what I'm doing, I'm just showing this as an example. Let's say we had a bunch of these parts, right? And we named these brick, right? Like I said, don't worry about what I'm doing. You can see we have 3 bricks right here, right? And then we have all these other parts. So sure, we know that these are the bricks, but we've got all these other parts too that are in the way in here, and it's not really sorted. So how about we insert a model, which we have. So in the properties tab, which I had you open earlier, you'll see we've got a property named name. So if we click on that property, you'll see it highlights the text, and we're able to change it to whatever we want. So how about we change it to bricks, right? And this will be a folder or a model containing all of the bricks. Now, how do we get the bricks in there? Well, as I showed you before, we can click and drag and put each and every single brick in there. And then we can close this little tab, and as you can see, the Explorer is so much neater. If we click on this model, it highlights every single part and not just one of them, because we're clicking on the model. So let's run through that again. So as you remember, we were clicking and dragging each individual part into that folder, but what if we have a bunch of parts, right? What if we have more than we want to end up clicking and dragging? You know, it's not going to be fun for us to just keep clicking and dragging over and over again. So let's say we had this many bricks. So there's a couple of ways we could do this. So there is something called shift clicking, which you can do by pressing and holding down shift while you're highlighting a part in the Explorer. And then if you click on another part while shift is being held, it selects the part that you were already selecting, as well as everything above it in the Explorer. We can also deselect items by clicking underneath, and it will just keep bringing it up, and we can also go down too. But if we shift click and select all of these parts, we can then click and drag and bring them into the bricks folder. Now there's another way to do this too, but it is a little bit slower, but this is only for times when, let's say this one was named a brick, and then this one was named Z brick, right? And then let's just ignore what I'm doing right here again. I'm just trying to get this to refresh in here. As you can see, we've got all these parts here, but we've got a couple that if we tried to shift click, you see we select the base plate and a couple of other parts that we don't want to select. So what we can do instead is obviously shift click these, right? And we got all those selected. But now let's try letting go of shift and instead pressing left control, which is the button usually on the bottom left side of your keyboard. And the spelling is CTRL. And what we can do is left click on this brick right here. And as you can see, it doesn't select the base plate because we're doing control clicked. We can click it once to select it and click it again to unselect it. So if we accidentally do select the base plate, we can get rid of that too. And then we're also just going to click on the Z brick, and as you can see, while we're holding left control, it lets us click as many parts as we want without deselecting the others. Let's try letting go of control and clicking, let's say, this part right here. Uh-oh. Now it just deselected all of the other parts and is only selecting this one. So like I was showing before, we want to make sure that we are selecting, or that we were holding down control when doing this. Alright, lastly, or almost lastly, I want to show you how to change your studio theme, because that can be very useful sometimes. As you can see, I have this dark theme, and I personally think it's very easy on the eyes. It's great for when you're either programming or modeling late at night, or in a dark room. You know, you don't want to have a bright light shining on you all day in a really dark environment. That wouldn't be good for your eyes. So we want to go over here to File, and we want to left click, and then we want to go down here to Studio Settings. Now, if we scroll down to Theme, as you can see, I have mine selected as dark. So what we can do instead is click on this and change this to, let's say, light, or vice versa. We can go from light to dark. There's also a default color scheme, but that just really means it's dark. It doesn't, it doesn't change anything. I would just leave it on either dark or light. Don't leave it on default, or it might change to something you don't want it to be. Okay. So, lastly but not least, what we want to do is learn how to publish our place. So if we click up here onto File and go down to Publish to Roblox, or we can press Alt and P, you'll see it brings up this tab, or this page over here. Now, what this page will allow us to do is change the name of our game. So let's say YouTube tutorial place, right? And in the description, we can change it to yada 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 yada, right? And there's also a creator section. You don't really need to worry about this unless you're trying to add it into a group. So I wouldn't worry about it. Then we have this genre tab right here. And this just allows us to let players know what type of game it is. Is it sci-fi? Is it horror? Is it a fighting game? Or building? Or you can select it as all. It might be harder for people to find your game that way, but if that's what you want, then it's certainly an option. And then lastly, we have this section called Devices. Now, if we untick these checkboxes, that means that we are not able to play this game on any of these devices. Let's say, though, we only want people on the computer to play our game. Well, if we check this box, that means that if people have a phone or a tablet or console, they will not be able to play our game. Let's say we just want computer and console players to play our game. We'll get this agreement thing. I want you to read that over by yourself. That's definitely not something you should skip, but I already know what this says, so I'm just going to click agree. And as you can see, now we can only play this game on computers or consoles. So now what we're going to do is just press create. And you'll see it takes a couple of seconds. And then bam! YouTube tutorial place successfully published. So that's all for today. In the next episode, I will be teaching you guys the basics of programming. Things like variables, functions, and also how to insert your scripts. So, yeah, talk to you the next time.